Republican Party in a state of disarray. We'll take a look at whether it's reaped what it's sown. Then the Shelley Silver saga far from over. Silver, he wants to keep some secret evidence under wraps, but a judge just said no. Could there be more bombshells to come? Also, the Cuomo-de Blasio feud firing up yet again. And this time, a whole lot of New Yorkers could be the losers. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I am Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Now, the guys are going to be on in a few minutes to talk about last night's debate and where the campaign goes from here. But I want to take the opportunity to reassess a week that I think will forever change politics and, more specifically, the one-time grand old party. We hit a new low, if that was even possible, when the Donald decided to make his hand size issue one in the election to decide the next leader of the free world.
He referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it.
Cue the cheers, the eye rolls, and the little rupturing of the Republican Party. However, before you believe for a second, either from the other candidates, conservative talking heads, or so-called party fathers, that they have to save the Republican Party for Trump, put on the highest pair of boots you have, because they're not only full of it, they're all complicit in his rise and place at the head of their table. Yesterday, Mitt Romney was exhumed long enough to condemn Trump's coarseness, Republican bona fides, and illegitimacy to the throne of Lincoln and Reagan.
Dishonesty is Donald Trump's hallmark. He claimed that he had spoken clearly and boldly against going into Iraq. Wrong. But you say, wait. Isn't he a huge business success? Doesn't he know what he's talking about? No, he isn't. And no, he doesn't.
First, let's talk about the source. Romney, 4 years ago, hat in hand, all but groveled before the Donald and Trump towers to try and get his endorsement. Moreover, the one-time pro-choice moderate who initiated Obamacare in Massachusetts before it ever became the law of the land, the same guy who managed to insult 47% of Americans in a single video, is an interesting voice to espouse issue purity and discretion. But let's forget the messenger and let's consider the message. The party of Lincoln and Reagan. Now, I wonder what Honest Abe would think about his party's platform in 2016 when it comes to equality. Deport them all, build a wall, institute religious tests for entry into America. How about the great communicator? Do you imagine the Freedom Caucus's conniption at the sight of Reagan and Tip O'Neill negotiating policy over drinks like they did all the time? The loudest voices in today's GOP would have labeled Ronnie a traitor like they did to Boehner after him. As they've said, compromise to them equates treason. We have gotten to this acrid place in Washington and the spawn that is Donald Trump because the GOP is reaping what it sowed. It wasn't that long ago that the Republican Party I knew wouldn't have permitted their own to propagate the lie that was the birther movement. They wouldn't have let their own members label Obama a Muslim, you liar, in the middle of the State of the Union. They wouldn't have made their first priority to root for failure of our commander-in-chief before he even stepped into the Oval Office.
Our top political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
So like with Senator McConnell, none of this has happened in a vacuum. In the last 20 years, the GOP has knowingly outsourced their messaging and how they'd be defined to Fox News and people like Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Mark Levin, and Michael Savage. The result? The Tea Party, Freedom Caucus, and an ugliness that now seemingly has the blessing of Republican establishment. Wishing deaths to AIDS patients, calling sexual assault victims sluts, warning citizens that our own military, the American U.S. military, was coming in the dead of night to take their guns from them, race baiting, gay bashing, fomenting hatred to people that don't look like, pray like, or sound like them. This fringe became a sounding board that the GOP more than ignored. They encouraged and permitted to help shape their platform. Republicans were repeatedly warned that they were creating a monster that would someday devour them. And now that day has come. By making the government the enemy in every narrative, their loudest voices now resemble reality show contestants trying to out-crazy the last guy. And that brings us to Mr. Donald Trump. Almost as distasteful as is Trump are the self-serving moralists and hypocrites and frauds crawling out of the woodwork now who condemn him from the right. But they should be careful as they try to engineer an alternative outcome in Cleveland at the convention, spitting on their own electorate in the process. Here's the scary part. The alternatives, especially Cruz, are unbelievably even worse. Now, while the GOP deserves this clown card that they've created, it has gone from an amusing sideshow to downright dangerous. This is not a competition for a rose, a cash prize, or a singing contract. This is for the leadership of the free world and launch codes. So, forget your personal politics. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, you name it. We the people, all of the people, deserve two credible choices come November, not one that came from what we saw last night. A punctuation to a long-running story about a race to the bottom that delivered a deafening thud, and that ought to scare every single one of us. All right, I'm done. Coming up next, the panel will join us to take a look at last night's Republican debate, the primaries tomorrow and Super Saturday, and a whole lot more.